Buenos días. Quiero presentarme antes de...
Good morning. I'd like to introduce myself, first of all, and primarily organizing Roman and the Rooted Organizing Committee for having invited me and my colleague here to come here to address you. Well, I also would like to congratulate you for your 5th anniversary. So I can see that the audience is increasing every single year, and this Rooted conference is improving in terms of attendance, level of speakers. So the two of us are military. We are lieutenant colonels. So we work at the Security Information Unit belonging to the Ministry of Defense. And our mission, the mission of our unit, is to manage the operational activities that are proactive, reactive, and detection related to information security and cyber defense within the corporate telecommunication and corporate systems. So we, from our unit, deal with corporate systems. Corporate systems from the Ministry of Defense, which at the end of the day means a network of more than over 100,000 users, where 70,000 of them have access to browsing the web and to email. We are managing both personal information, logistic information, healthcare information, because we have military hospital, academic institutions, heritage institutions. As also would like to mention that from our unit, from our center, we manage more than 150 nodes, both national in nature, and as well as the areas where we have deployed or where our operations as well. Right, I would like to start with the presentation now. We will be discussing cyber war, and well, so I will just use like 2 analogies, okay, or 2 films. War games up to Jungle 4.0. So all this cyber war has evolved significantly, let us say, in the past 30 years. My first computer I bought it in 1989, and I was one of the first people who had it, and my computer had 20 megabytes in the hard drive. Well, most of you here are less than 30 years of age. So you were born with a computer on your hands, a smartphone on your hands, and then, well, you can see how much all this world has evolved. Technologies have advanced at a really fast pace, and sometimes that development has been so fast that we just didn't have the time to generate security accordingly or parallel to that. Well, the higher the level of development of a country, the more dependent the country is on the development of IT. Well, there is a difference between a Western world or a country, a third world country. And this is, well, for us, technologies nowadays have become commodities. However, sometimes we are not aware that we are also becoming increasingly vulnerable. The title of my presentation, or of our presentation, well, we'd like to talk about war games first, and then about Crystal Jungle, because here we are talking about a cyber war, a possible cyber war that would attack the information systems and that would endanger the stability of a country. Well, the first film is a film where we have a young boy who from home just connects to a computer. He sucks that he has connected to a factory, but then he makes a nuclear war. He connects to a center of ballistic missiles in the US, and he thinks that he's playing, and then he chooses as his own country Russia, and then he launches an attack to the US. US computers see that or feels that that is a real attack, not a false attack or a game attack, and then the United States prepares a response. So, well, here we can see the extent of the danger of all this. And then the second film, it's the Crystal Jungle 4.0, tells us about this development, this evolution. Well, there is a 30-year difference between these two films. The first one was released in 1983, and then we see different formats for these films. One is beta format, the other one is HD format. So we see, well, in the US depends strongly on IT technologies or IT. And here we can see an attack this time made by a number of hackers. And well, prepared by a number of hackers, and only 2 hackers execute or make the attack. That attack causes full chaos. First of all, they attack the financial systems of the country, transportation system, airports, subway system, telecommunications, and last, in the third phase, they attack critical infrastructures. That is to say, companies utility companies, gas companies, water companies, etc. So, and one of the evil guys was Bruce Willis. Well, he is an analogic hero in a digital era. Well, considering all these changes, this development and evolution of IT, we can see that we really need to be aware of the threat we are subjected to, so that we can manage the risk and we can respond accordingly. Well, within the Ministry of Defense, we do so through 3 main pillars. We do that through people, procedures, as well as technologies. Of course, you know, we cannot only work with human resources if we do not have good knowledge about technologies or techniques. Of course not. It's not a question about finding firewalls, DDSs, or antivirus if we do not have procedures and methods in place, as well as human resources who are really knowledgeable. Good morning. Before we continue, I will try to clarify a number of terms. Well, I'll say I will try not to clarify a number of terms because I'm not clear about them. Well, because if I'm not clear about them, it would be very difficult for me to clarify them. Okay, according to the word and to the definition in the Spanish dictionary, talks about disagreement, between 2 parties, contradictions, and one of them, which is the one that we will be using, it is the armed force or armed conflict between 2 different nations or 2 groups within the same nation. So the prefix cyber, which is widely used, tells us that there is just a relationship. This says that there is a relationship with IT networks and the cyberspace. Cyberspace is an artificial means created by IT means, and this is what actually adds confusion. This is a simulated reality. Is that a reality or is it a simulation? Here it says that it is a simulated reality. This is made up of all the networks, computers all over the world. So the first time that this term was used, well, not the first time that it was used, the first time that became popular was in 1984 in a William Gibson novel. And there is no agreement about the definition of this term. There are several definitions out there. No agreement has been reached on any of them. Some people use it in a philosophical manner when they want to talk about an alternative reality. Is it an alternative or a real reality? Well, we cannot really mix. We should not mix the internet with the cyberspace. Let us say that the internet is the hardware, the software, the computer, however, and then let us say that cyberspace is the number of components that are around in the cyberspace. That is to say, objects or says objects or identity. This is again confusing. So if an identity identifies something and then in the cyberspace you may find yourself with several identities, okay, then you or entities, then they are not identical because I said that these are virtual entities. I'm still confused. Well, according to this definition, everything that is taking place in the cyberspace is taking place, but it is not taking place in a physical space because we are talking about a virtual space. We also have like more formal definitions which is included in the National Strategy for Security, including all the users, real users, virtual users. Now, let us see what it says about cyber war. Cyber war is not registered, it does not appear on our dictionary. So we have war plus the prefix cyber. Here it says it's a fight that takes place in the cyberspace, which makes it an artificial attack or struggle. We use the systems, we will use the information. So it is not included in the International Human Law Charter. So, and I guess that this poses like international difficulty or hindrance. It is also important to establish the difference between cyber war and cyber crime. And we also have the Cold Cyber War. Well, I was not very clear about Cold War. So we are involved in Cold War, but there is no war declaration. Well, when there is a declaration of war, legally established means of country are used to do that war declaration. And I really would like to clarify that. From the beginning of time, people have always tried to reach superiority versus other people, countries, or armies. In the beginning, this type of superiority was superiority on earth, and later on, naval superiority or maritime superiority. In the beginning, those countries who had the most powerful military were the most powerful, then the army superiority. And then in the 20th century, we started to talk about another type of superiority. With the First World War, we started to have planes and aircraft. And then at that time, we started to talk about air superiority. Afterwards, a fourth domain came in. That was the space, the famous War of the Galaxies from the United States. And only short time ago, we started to see a fifth dimension, that being the cyberspace. Cyberspace, to be developed, has to support itself on the four previous domains. When we talk about the cyberspace, we are talking about something which is not physical. It is a non-physical thing. Here we have terms, words that actually does not exist. When you say which frontier, what is the frontier of cyber exist? That does not exist. Distance does not exist in cyberspace. Time does not exist in cyberspace. When we are talking about time in cyberspace, you are talking about the speed of light. Legislation or lack of legislation to control and to manage what happens in the cyberspace. Well, if we want to talk about its definition of cyberspace, well, let us see what the National Strategy of Security says. It says this is much more. This goes beyond the internet. It includes the internet as well as all the system and communication, telecommunication, communication and information systems. Okay, internet plus communication and information systems. Cyberspace is open or exposed to a number of threats. Cyberspace may suffer a number of cyber attacks. Cyber attacks would be, on the one hand, characterized by the anonymous character. Anonymous nature is given out by the internet. Sometimes we don't know who's making that attack. Asymmetry. So we don't really need to have a balance of forces for one of the parties to launch an attack on the other. Later on, we talk about asymmetry more. But let us say that this is the war of the weakest or the war of the poorest. Cyber attack could be made from anywhere in the world. Speed of propagation. We are talking about speed of light. So we may be launching an attack in Spain, to China, and then the speed of transmission, the speed of propagation is just instantaneous, real time. And same as the spread of the attack. The attack could spread all over the world. And then as well as evolution of the attack. When we talk about cyber attacks and its characteristics, we are talking about a number of targets or objectives. The objectives may be cyber terrorism, spying, political hacking. At the end of the day, the objectives are changing, the actors, the players are changing, and depending on whether we want to, well, we are talking about a cyber attack to one target or another, with one objective or another, if the actor is a state, an organized crime group, a hacker, you name it, at the end of the day, we are talking about cyber attacks. What changes are the players, the actors, the attackers, as well as the targets and the objectives. All right. Now, my turn. Let me show you this table. This table explains risk analysis. States also do risk analysis. They take their assets, their territories, their economies, they analyze vulnerabilities, look for possible impact, look for likeliness, and therefore they conduct a risk analysis. That risk analysis is included in the National Strategy of Security. I have my risk analysis, therefore now I'm in a position to ask for a budget. These threats, we know that may come from different sources, not only from other states. Cyber risks may be more or less deep, maybe more or less dangerous, maybe more or less persistent. They share the characteristics that we've seen before for cyberspace, that is to say, ubiquitous. We start to see the arrival of organized mafia, terrorist groups. All of them start to show up in the cyberspace. If I put all that within my box of risk analysis, then I get to see everything that I want to develop, the strategies that I want to develop. I want to get a budget for that. And of course, I need to, all this has to be justified. The World Economic Forum also makes its own global risks analysis. Well, in 2013, it talked about a digital burn, a digital fire, which was out of control in a hyper-connected world. Here they include financial risk, environmental risks, and actually they made a special emphasis on this on 2013. They launched this global risk analysis in January 2013, and I think they got it right. This is exactly what happened to here with Twitter for the Associated Press, and it talked about false attacks. And when they said that Barack Obama was injured, then the stock exchange plummeted in 20 minutes. In the beginning, it was attributed to the Syrian army, and the same as the 1938 radio broadcast, where a message made people all over the world panic. This time, these viral type of messages, these viral messages, up until they prove right, they could have lots of repercussions, whether they are political in nature, economic in nature, etc. So, in this study, we also see different type of risks known as black swan type of risks, standing for the most dangerous ones, for the most critical attacks. In the cyberspace, defending yourself is more difficult than making an attack. If we don't know how to balance that scale, so we may find a long-term disruptive technology. Consumers, users may end up not trusting that medium, because in the end of the day, if that does not happen, we will be facing a situation of having predators and victims. So this type of attack is referred to as Cybergeddon. And again, we have our friend Bruce Willis. Why Cybergeddon? Well, nowadays we are talking about the Internet of the Things. Everything is connected. We all want to be connected. And actually, I read news about possibility of giving an IP to car tires. Why a car tire needs to have an IP? They just want to have everything connected. There is a slogan which I very much believe: anything that is connected to the internet is vulnerable or is likely or can be hacked. Of course, but everything is connected to the internet. So many functionalities of many systems are significantly reduced or diminished, and therefore are likely to be attacked. So in the worst case scenario, we could find ourselves in a situation of finding or facing a Cybergeddon. And now, when we talk about cyber war, well, considering what it was said yesterday in the round table and what we are talking about today, we are talking about a war which is not executive, which will be waged in coordination with other type of actions, I don't know, terrorist activities. Cyber war is not exclusive of the armed forces. In the cases of cyber war, as it was said yesterday, cyber war is participated by a high number of actors. It is participated by the intelligence community. It is participated by the university community, by companies, corporations, citizens. Here in Spain, we are talking about the National Encryption Center. We are talking about the Center for the Protection of Critical Infrastructure. We are talking about the law enforcement agencies, Guardia Civil, national police forces. We are talking about security companies, universities. And moving on to the Crystal Jungle film, whenever the attack is caused, well, the first responders were police forces, then the FBI, then it was considered to be a federal crime, and then we could see the participation of the National Security Agency, and at the end of the day, the one who resolves the problem is our Bruce Willis. So this is a universal threat that affects all the critical sector. The origin is of an indefinite nature. Well, the cyber war could be launched by armed forces or states or group of hackers organized by governments or terrorist groups, organized crime groups. Another characteristic of cyber war is that it is difficult to defend whatever you cannot, what you don't see. Now I can think about a speech given by the Secretary of State of the US, where he said some things sometimes we know things that we don't know, things that are unknown to us. There are some things that we know that are unknown to us. So that's where the key of the question is. So the objectives of cyber wars will not be, I don't know, telecommunications center or the missile military base. The targets of cyber wars are mainly banks, companies. Talking about companies as targets of cyber wars, the Americans short ago were developing a combat plane or aircraft, and then a few months later the Chinese launched a similar model, but this time with the logotype of the Chinese armed forces. It was exactly the same type of plane, and actually, we could see that the Chinese have hacked the US computers and they have stolen all the technology. Also, the other targets are critical infrastructures. We should not forget that 80% of critical infrastructures are private companies or utility companies, gas company, private electricity companies. Most of them are private in nature. And last, to be able to fight this cyber war, armed forces require to have dedicated units specialized in cyber defense. If we do not have our dedicated cyber defense units, we will not be playing on equal terms. So, when we talk about a cyber war, we talk about a war which is undeclared. So no country admits or recognizes that is launching an attack on another. So one of the only proofs or evidences that I found about that, it was a message given by one of the chiefs in Afghanistan who admitted that he had attacked Taliban and at the same time he had been receiving cyber attacks. He said that he was attacking or cyber attacking Taliban to understand or to access their control systems to destroy them, and then later on to continue attacking. But then the Pentagon said yes, they did cyber attacks, but they had the permission to do so. They were authorized to do so according. And then, but at the same time, they didn't really. This general said Taliban 2.0 they had a strong sponsor behind them. My colleague was saying that in the cyberspace we find asymmetry. This is a definition of asymmetrical fights or struggles. So we see here all these bullet points. And here the definition, it says that this is launched between different contenders with different military capabilities. So they may have substantial difference in terms of strategic power. The case of Mao Zedong with the popular Chinese army, where they used dramatically different strategies. And of course, Machiavelli also talked about those different strategies, that is to say, the concentration of forces, of specific forces at specific points in time. But as I say, it used different strategies. Another characteristics is using military resources to be used openly, abiding by legal restrictions and ethical restrictions. So we can also talk about asymmetric attack if one of the parties tries to take advantage of the other by acting in a non-conventional way. We could talk about guerrilla movements, subversive fighting movements. Sometimes it is difficult to set a frontier, to set a line or a limit. They are also looking for specific success, and they create lots of hype, and also they want to tire out the adversary. So Vietnam, at the Vietnam War, the Vietnamese army tired the U.S. army use of mass destruction weapons. Clear example of the launch of atomic bombs, Nagasaki or Hiroshima, Nagasaki. The use of 2 atomic bombs actually made that war an asymmetrical war and made Japan surrender. And then, of course, also influencing or having, yes, an influence on the country or on the public opinion of the other band or the adversary. So most of the asymmetrical conflicts that take place in the cyberspace are asymmetrical in nature. The attacker is or may be weaker than the party it attacks. Consequences can be very severe. Attacks can be caused or can be made from an anonymous position, and then we may have also the participation of other actors. And even if this case has been on for, well, took place back in 2007, I would like to share with you the Latvian attack. So it was the first cyber war within the NATO setting. Latvia, it's a country with lots of technological advances because they are very cold temperatures. Well, they do everything on the internet. They buy the food and everything on the internet. They suffer a cyber attack. The country was paralyzed for 1 week. No one admitted or claimed responsibility for this attack. But the reason was that they have moved the statue of the Russian soldier. They moved it from the city center to the cemetery, and then all the IP addresses of the attack were Russian addresses. Well, that was a milestone within the cyber war. And this is so because Latvia, as a NATO country, considered that it was being attacked and then asked NATO for help. But NATO denied help based on the NATO treaty. But that says that in Article 4 that the parties will consult each other whenever one of the parties feels that territorial or political independence or security of that country is being strongly jeopardized. They thought that this type of cyber attack was not threatening all these facts, and they also based their denial on Article 5, when it says that whenever an armed attack is made on some of the NATO countries, it is understood as all the NATO countries being attacked as well, and that therefore it was possible to react with any measures, even using armed forces or armed means. Article number 6 also refers to armed attacks and considers that whenever armed attack is caused to any of the NATO parties is when that attack affects the territory or the planes or aircrafts of that countries. Based on these 3 articles, the NATO considers that Latvia did not need the NATO help to defend itself. From there onwards, NATO realized that there was a void, that there was a vacuum. NATO could anticipate that from that moment onwards, attacks were most likely to be cyber attacks in nature, where critical infrastructure, telecommunications, and communication systems were very likely to be attacked. For that, NATO created an excellent center for cyber defense. Actually, it was set up in Latvia, and from there onwards is issued a policy for cyber defense. It also created a cyber defense action plan, a rapid reaction team, and, well, just to tell you that last year they also launched a tender to buy that capacity for a value of 60 million euros. They also have a committee for management of cyber defense. Now at NATO, no agreement has been reached as to what would be the composition or which would be these acting response teams. Some countries say that each NATO country should have its own rapid response teams, whether other NATO countries believe that NATO should have like a central fast response teams. So they still haven't reached their own agreement. They said that each NATO country should have a good enough capacity to defend themselves in the face of a cyber attack. This is the reason why they organize on an annual basis cyber exercises. Spain takes part in this type of exercises. This type of exercises are divided in 2 parts. One part is information and communication systems that belong to for NATO, where the infrastructures of NATO would be attacked or affected. And then the other type of exercises are exercises about information and communication systems of NATO countries. But here we are talking about attacks to critical infrastructures, to ATMs, to utility companies, etc. Also, countries are realizing the need to have a cyber security strategy in place. In the past few years, we have seen significant developments in this type of strategy. Most of these strategies are based on a single thing. They realize that cybersecurity is a national security issue that should be coordinated at a higher level. And they also talk about dependence. They don't know whether they would like to depend on the intelligence community. Another countries say that they depend on the armed forces or on the military. Another part it depends on the presidency of the government. But they all realize the need to protect critical infrastructures. Because, as I mentioned before, 80% of these critical infrastructures are private. They also admit the need to have a public-private partnership and then to raise awareness between stakeholders. And they also admit that national security is also international in nature. We cannot really say or isolate ourselves, okay, I fixed that, I resolved that, but that is to be based on international cooperation. In Spain, well, Spain seems to be very clear about that. It seems that our constitution in article number 8 stated that the armed forces have as its mission to defend territorial integrity, as well as the constitution. But when that territorial integrity. When we shift that to the cyberspace, who are the responsible people now? Now we have a national strategy for security, where a national commission has been created, and then where we have all different types of actors. We have a national encryption center, CNPIC. Yesterday at the roundtable we have representatives from there, law enforcement agencies, then also the cyber defense unit, depending from the Ministry of Defense, and then the Ministry for Industry, where we have INTECO, Ministry for the Presidency and Public Administrations, and any type of CERT, whether they are state at the state level, national level, or regional level. Well, this is a saying or a quote that someone said: the use of violence in policy is the diplomacy taken to the extreme, or said otherwise, whenever diplomacy fails, states wage a war against each other. So we are talking about legitimate war here whenever a country decides to wage a war against another. So here we could talk about maritime war, air war, and when we talk about the space, we talk about cyber war. Cyber conflict appears whenever one of the party makes cyber attacks. Well, the nature of cyber attacks regulates the nature of the response, and of course taking into account the purpose, the target of those cyber attacks, whether it is political, economical, control systems, and it is increasingly likely that this type of operations are included within traditional type of conflicts. So, therefore, in order to clarify all that, to find out how all these new means are to be deployed and implemented, so the US and other countries are working on all these aspects, on all these computer network operations, standing for all the activities that will take place in the cyberspace, with the ends to have superiority in the cyberspace. Of course, it will be very difficult to have like full superiority in the space, but at least during the time when you are carrying out your activities. So, what type of operations, CNO operations, do we have? Well, we have the ones that are associated with the management of security incidents, as I say, management of those incidents, preventing attacks, managing attacks, realizing that I'm being attacked, and then exploitation of IT networks. So this is about looking for intelligence, doing cyber intelligence in the cyberspace by using the IT networks, capturing information from the enemy, capturing information that I need to create intelligence and to tap into it. So here we can talk about cyber weapons. These are weapons that have been designed to operate in this setting. And if we are talking about operations, well, we should differentiate military operation from cyber war and from cyber spying. Well, in principle, I can see an attack. Well, if I really want to give a legitimate answer, perhaps, well, my response is not proportional because it is just as, well, it is cyber terrorism. And sometimes the times that we use in our response adds problems to this. For instance, well, looking at the cases that we had before about Latvia and Estonia, at that time it was seen that 1/3 of the attacks came from the US. In terms of cyber intelligence, well, intelligence, well, we should differentiate that from know-how, from data. Intelligence wants to satisfy a number of information needs. So it is a question of having foresight, anticipating the worst case scenario, and therefore there are a number of intelligent needs that have to be fulfilled. The intelligence analyst should have a number of qualities, should have deep knowledge on the matter, should look at everything from a lateral manner, using alternative thinking, so that eventually that intelligence is created. Intelligence goes through a cycle made up of 4 phases: obtention of the information, gathering the information, also, as I say, gathering information, then production of the actual intelligence, then compilation of that information. Sometimes the information has to be processed beforehand. Of course, I cannot really take like naked logs, but I really need to translate it into a language which is readable, human readable. After that, I aggregate all those data, I compile them, and I put them together with other type of data so that I can produce intelligence. Intelligence that it is there to satisfy information and intelligent needs. And last, dissemination. And here we have 2 essential things: the need to know and the need to share. Of course, I cannot disseminate to everyone, but I have to disseminate it to the party who needs it. It is not that I say, because this is secret, this is intelligence, I keep it for myself, because if I keep it for myself, it will be of no use whatsoever. Regarding conclusions, we can say that ITC opens up new possibilities. Opens up new possibilities, as I say, but also a source of threats and dangers. Cyberspace allows us to act anonymously by using many anonymous identities. It is therefore necessary to have a good understanding of those threats in order to manage risks. And this, well, here we can see ourselves, but we should not forget that there are no geographical limits or frontiers. Well, response in the case of a cyber war should be a multinational issue, multidisciplinary issue, as well as multi-sectorial issue. It is an asymmetrical war. It is the war of the weakest parts. And also a question that we ask ourselves, and someone should respond to that, which would be the legitimate defense response. When we receive a cyber attack, first of all, we need to know who has made the attack, what has been the consequences, and then we prepare our response. Sometimes legitimate defense is no longer applicable. Proportionate response. To what extent a cyber attack has to be responded proportionally? How much proportionality? And physical response. Obama said that he reserved his rights to defend, to defend himself physically in the face of a cyber attack. And now, what about the present and the future cyber war? Who would be the soldier of the future? Well, like Van Damme with sensors, GPS, with night vision, Google's, or rather the IT expert or telecommunication expert acting from a room. it's been said that the future the future world will not be made with cannons or with traditional weapons, but from a room in front of a computer. We are not sure whether that will be proved right or not, but we know that things have changed or are changing dramatically. Well, Sun Tzu anticipated that, well, attackers will be able to create the destiny of the victims. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you for your presentation. Has been a good one. Well, since yesterday, it's been round and round in my mind. Well, lots has been said about cyber war. However, to me, this is quite ethereal. So there are we see what is happening between Syria and Ukraine. Yes, it is ethereal, of course. I don't know, as Antonio said, I don't know whether this is chaos or not. This is complicated as well as very, very difficult. In Ukraine, I've been following what is happening there. I was expecting more. Well, some interconnection nodes were hacked, some IPs, and they also acted on mobile telephony. This is just ordinary, conventional, normal. In Georgia, did that make sense? Yes, it made sense. Well, you know, sometimes some minor conflicts ends up in a war. Well, short ago, we witnessed the Arab Spring, where all the ICTs, social networks, played a crucial role to remove the government, etc. But yes, social networks as well as ICDs played a crucial role. So I give more importance to it in the field or in the arena of subversion. Good morning, Felix and José Luis. Congratulations for your presentation. And every time we talk about Latvia, I feel really sad. Well, because it is said that Estonia, according to NATO Article 5, wanted to have the help of NATO. NATO denied the service or denied their help, and then from their own words, NATO started to work on those issues, and then Spain created the COSDEF for cyber defense. However, I'd like to know whether this vortex within the Ministry of Defense. I will focus my question on the Ministry of Defense. That is to say, the vortexes, those who have, the responsible people, okay, the responsible people, do they really believe that? Do they really believe in cyber war? Do they really believe in what is happening? Other than talking, because sometimes words are just they vanish in the air. I believe that, but I think that my boss should also believe in that, but I'm not very clear whether my boss believes in that or not. Well, this is a tricky question, eh? Well, tricky question, politically correct response. Yes, we have created a cyber defense unit. We have a national strategy of security. Well, perhaps they do not believe in it, but to be honest, they are extremely concerned. Well, yes, the top responsible is very much concerned about cyber defense. Yes, I can tell you so. Thank you so much to you too. Thank you.